2019, Smash Ultimate had just released. There's a tournament every weekend and the community is eating it up. 2019 had two of the biggest Smash tournaments of all time, and it showed no signs of stopping. Until it did. 2020 only had 6 majors before COVID shut down all competition for a year and a half. This wasn't just a normal year we missed out on, however. Looking at those 6 tournaments, we can realize 2020 might have been one of the most interesting years in Smash history. Before that, however, I'd like to set the scene a little bit. 2019 had ended with Kago Saga, won by MKLeo, followed up by Tweak, Meister, and Light. With the exception of Meister, all of these players were top 10 in the previous season. In fact, only 3 players in the second iteration of the PGRU top 10 weren't also top 10 in the previous season, and with the exception of Meister, all of them were top 20. Only one person joined the top 5 who wasn't there previously, Nairo, who went from 8th in the world to 4th. The second half of 2019 was a fantastic season for Smash Ultimate, no doubt, and established a lot of who would be consistent top threats for the game. But to say the meta felt kinda the same as it had in the previous season wouldn't be unwarranted. MKLeo had won 50% of the super majors that occurred in the second season of the PGRU, and he got second to the other 2 he entered. Consistency was the main theme of this season, and it wouldn't be surprising to expect more of the same in 2020. Then, let's make big moves happen. At first glance, this tournament may seem mild as ever, but a closer look will show the start of something big. Of the 4 top 5 players that entered, 2 didn't make top 8, and Mars, who managed to make it into top 8, still placed below his seed by 2 rounds. The only player that placed as expected was Nairo, who ended up taking the event. The main noteworthy runs of this event belonged to Dark Wizzy, who placed 7th, and wasn't even top 20 on the PGRV2, and MVD, who was unranked the season prior. Overall, this tournament wasn't a meta-defining change on its own, but it certainly acted as a strong predecessor for the following tournaments this year. Then the change happened.
He'd be watching out for everything else he has too. This just got scary.
Is that it? Did he just win? He did! And Schroeder defeats the #1 seed of Glitch 8.
He had a jump, he's mixing it up though. The Nair, is that enough? Yes, it is for sure. Mr. E, 3-0 victory over Light. Well done.
It's gonna take a little bit more, but he definitely got a lot of consent. There's the back air.
The Corrin did it!
Glitch 8 missing now on January 19th would be a major no one was expecting. The immediate thing one would notice is Dark Wizzy's 2nd place, and it was no easy feat either, as he had defeated both the Buzz and ESAM to get there, and a bracket reset on Tweak would mark this as the best result of his career. This wasn't the only result of this caliber by unexpected players, however. 4th place was another player outside the top 30, being Cosmos, who was already a well-renowned player, but with a mediocre second season, very few would have expected this run. But does it end there? Of course not. Both 7th place finishers, Dill and Mr. E, were both unranked, and got to top 8 after each of them eliminated Light. These, however, still weren't the most unexpected runs of this tournament. Hidden in 5th place was another unranked player, Schroeder, who had to defeat Meister, ranked 6th in the world, and Cosmos, who was also having an incredible run. He ended up outplacing a 16th seed by 3 rounds. Meanwhile, Light and Meister failed to make it to top 8 altogether. But you might be thinking, surely this change is only limited to NA, right? Other regions had to have kept some form of consistency. Wrong. In fact, the most impressive unranked run of the year might have happened at EVO Japan 2020, which was also the biggest tournament of the year. Unranked and mostly unknown player at the time, Passeriamon, got 4th place, and it came with wins on rank 34 at Suji, up-and-coming Palutena Jagaimo, and most notably, a clean 2-0 on top 10 player and best in Japan at the time, Zachary. Shiki also made top 8 being previously unranked. Wins on TK3, Shogun, and Jagaimo led him to an impressive 7th. Kome's run to 2nd is also rather unorthodox. He was only top 30 in the world, and he wasn't even top 10 in Japan. Wins on Zachary, T, and Raito made this the most impressive run of his career. Players who were top 10 in Japan at the time, like Kameme, T, and Protobanum, also failed to make top 8. So yeah, the meta was already clearly shifting, but you may have noticed something about this year so far. MKLeo had not entered a single event in 2020, so no one really truly knew if things could be different. Leo's dominance was the defining aspect of 2019, and if that wouldn't change, then the meta wouldn't truly shift. Enter Genesis 7, the perfect test for how 2020 would be. See, MKLeo has won every Genesis since the 4th iteration. This was his tournament, and to enter his domain and seriously think you could win, very few could do this. But who better to try than MKLeo's worst opponent, number 5 in the world, Mars. And you know how the story goes from here.
Ooh, somehow manages to make it back to stage, and now lining up the back airs, tries to get him to the side. Oh my God! No 4P just defeat. Mars is going to take Genesis 7.
I'd also like to bring some note to two other players' runs. Darkwizzy had continued his skyrocketing success here again with another 5th, and up until this point he had yet to miss a top 8 in 2020. As well as this, a new unranked player had began to work to become the best wolf in the world after Zachary dropped him. Charlie the King's path to 9th was more than incredible, it was astounding. He beat Scat, Elegant, and MVD before getting eliminated in a Game 5 with Meister. Another run I'd like to point out is that of Dakpos. Though he may have not gotten a top placing, he shook the bracket to its core with a win on Gluttony, which also marked Diddy Kong's best win at the time in all of Ultimate. And then we reached the final major of the year, Frostbite 2020 in January. Along with being the best Ultimate tournament of all time, it was also home to just as many upsets as the other tournaments. 24th seed Wrath would place 5th, and 46th seed Toast would get 7th. This was also Passerimon's first North American tournament, and after his absurd run at EVO Japan, his 9th place finish here was no surprise. In fact, he tied with Light to be the highest placing Fox at this event. Beyond all of this though, these three players' wins may have placed their runs above any of the others so far. Wrath beat Kameme, Gluttony, Passerimon, and Icy Mist. Toast beat Light, Samsora, Kameme, and Rafi X. And Passerimon beat Mars and Scat. That's 4 top 10 wins among them all. But if you remember this event, you may have already noticed me dodging the elephant in the room. 3-0, double 2 stock, in a 10-minute best-of-5 set would put another Mario on the map. Kurama's historic upset on MKLeo would go on to be one of the most talked about sets of all time, and even after becoming a top 20 player, this would still be his most remembered feat. An incredible tournament backed up by incredible upsets. Then, it was over. CEO Dreamland a few weeks later would lose most of the attendance it was expected to have, and after that, Smash went online for over a year. In a mere 2 months, the scene was revolutionized by new players, new storylines, then it was all taken away. But this doesn't make the things done during this season irrelevant. In a mock ranking by Orion Rank, T, Esam, and Darkwizzy would all be top 10, the first time any one of them achieved that in Ultimate. And beyond that, Passerimon would be 11th, after being unranked the season prior, and Kola, Kome, and Wrath would also be top 20 for the first time in their careers. So what can we speculate about what would have happened based on these players' success? Well, I think the most obvious thing is Mario's potential. Darkwizzy played almost no Wi-Fi during the year tournaments were gone, and its effect were obvious. He lost his incredible growth almost immediately, and entered a slump for years and hasn't been able to match his peak since. Kurama would also take a while to truly pick back up after Offline came back, but he would end up being better than ever by the time 2022 came around. Still, having 2 Marios who could have been reaching for top 20 at the same time, assuming Kurama's growth after his MKLeo win would have continued, is unheard of for the character. Another thing to note is that 3 of the top 5 on this ranking were new. Zachary T and Meister were all top 5 having not been before, and with Mars's dominant victory against MKLeo and T and Zachary's Game 5 sets at Frostbite, it's not out of the question to assume any of them could have ended up as the best player in the world, even if it's improbable. Passerimon was absolutely up there with Darkwizzy as one of the ones most affected by the shift to online. Being a complete unknown before 2020 into a grind that might have ended up with top 10 had it continued, ended up with him being unranked in 2021, and 99th in the world in 2022. He did remain the best Fox in Japan up until 2023, and continued to have fantastic runs here and there, like 3rd at Kagaribi 6, but he wasn't able to truly get back to the peak of his rise in 2020. There's also, of course, the topic of DLC, and almost all of Fighter Pass 2 came out while there were no offline events, with the exception of Sora. And Steve, Kazuya, and Minmin easily could have grown at a slower rate, or had more counterplay developed quicker, if it wasn't for the months and months dedicated players had to lab the characters. Of course, there's no knowing how things would have changed, but I think it could have greatly affected the almost instant rise of players like Akola and Onin, though I have no doubts they would still be fantastic players. While the dynamic post-quarantine was made interesting because of the time DLC players had to learn their characters, it could have easily quelled Smash Twitter just a little. Another interesting topic is the development of Tweak. Despite his fantastic win at Glitch, 9th at Genesis and 25th at Let's Make Big Moves made his season more mixed, but when quarantine hit he had shifted almost all his focus into Diddy Kong and quickly stepped back up to the top 3 player he was previously. In fact, that topic has a lot more depth to it. Players like Spargo, Sonics, Mia, and Akala all grinded online significantly before dominating their scenes when offline came back. And they all absolutely still would have ended up as top players, but it almost definitely would have taken more time without constantly grinding Wi-Fi weekly brackets with thousands of entrants to hyperbolic time chamber their growth. So, who really knows what would have happened during this lost year of Smash? It's a shame that we didn't get to experience it, but without the Wi-Fi era, the game would have been almost unrecognizable from how it is today. Whether that's for better or for worse, who knows? A full year of upsets, excitement, and shifting storylines, all lost to the sands of time. That's 2020, the year Smash lost.